Stay tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and thanks for selecting our show. In the studio is fine art photographer Joel-Peter Witkin. He is one of the most controversial photographers working today. Joel lives on an 11-acre ranch outside of Albuquerque, New Mexico. He said they call it Ranchero Deluxe. Very Hollywood. Once having considered the priesthood, his moralistic values stem from an Orthodox Jewish father and a devoutly Catholic mother. His teenage son goes to Catholic school. Joel's photographs both repel and attract the viewer, and I feel a little uncomfortable saying they repel the viewer, Joel, but is that kind of a true statement?
I would actually prefer the word challenge.
I like that.
Yeah, because I really deal with the essential questions of life. And when you think about it, why deal with anything else? I mean, why deal with marginality of life? Why deal with personality, identity? What's true by way of the thin soup of contemporary photography, because my life is devoted to photography. So what's true about I call it thin soup, the non-important aspect of photography, and this is photography I'm talking about that's shown, by way of galleries and sometimes museums, is they're about this kind of misguided intentionality. And I think before anyone takes on the responsibility of making something that's going to be shared, that person has to basically turn themselves inside out, like a glove, to find out from early on what they're about, their meaning, their purpose in life is, and their contribution to life is going to be.
But you say all of that, and we talk about how you feel about it, but why is the subject so disturbing, and why is it so difficult to confront? What is what you find when you turn yourself inside out?
What you find is, I believe, is what you're given as far as your abilities to manifest meaning in life. In my case, and I've tried photographing flowers. And I've gotten actually from of course. But in the process of even doing experiments on other kinds of subjects, there's always a kind of even in the, I'll follow through on this, even in the flower photographs, we'll say, when I was in graduate school, I was experimenting, and even those flowers didn't look like flowers, they looked like faces or some sort of manifestations of something else that shouldn't have been there. And I guess what finally a person finds out is the fact that they are given, and they have to believe this, they have to know this, they are given kinds of channels into reality that's best for them as a vehicle of reality in the highest form of reality, their highest selves. And in my case, I was always interested in people who are very unusual, who are heroic as far as their philosophical viewpoint in life. And I've always interested in bizarre.
So those are the kind of subjects you pick to photograph?
Yeah, very, very naturally. But of course that changes in time. But at the same time, when I say the ultimate questions in life, it's the things that deal with the triumphs and tragedies of existence, the splendor and misery, we'll say, about birth and death, renewal, hatred and love, the things that basically we can't define. Now, as far as the initial point of this people being shocked by work,
right.
I think we're always shocked or even horrified or even mystified, I prefer that word too, by things that appear to be very, very meaningful in something like photography that we almost take for granted, even though it's part of the fiber of everyone's life. And you think of course, everything is basically turned around or turned through photographic imagery.
But you are quoted as saying, I photograph death because that's a part of living.
Yeah, it's a part of life.
A part of life, a part of living, but it's a part of life. But when you talked about earlier, saying that that it's not shocking, or we see it every day, but we see it, or we hear about it, or we think about it, but we don't actually have it photographed and on our wall. That's the difference I was thinking about when you were explaining that.
Not in a way to defend what I do, because that's kind of an ongoing aspect of my own personal evolution. I think that's the purpose of and should be the purpose of all work. People do things to find out what they're made of. They find out in the process what they love most, and they keep loving. I mean, anyone who commits themselves, their lives to discovery, is a very, very joyous person. And I think the paradox is that people see my work and they say, well, you know, it's about darkness. Who the hell did this stuff? You know, if they don't know about me, if they see the work they usually do anonymously off the walls. But actually, I've always been optimistic, and I still am. I'm always had this very sense of great joy. If I can, to address this particular photograph behind me.
Let's talk about this photograph, because I want to ask you about it. But it's so bizarre to hear you say, "I'm coming." You know, we always think of you as coming from this very dark place, and you say once you've discovered yourself, you have a joy of living. I think that's a very upbeat kind of way to look at this whole process that you go through.
Because
otherwise, I think it would like really drag you down.
Yeah. If I were only about the darkness, I probably would have committed suicide or become a drunk a long time ago. And I don't believe in either of those. This particular image, well, by the way, it's called John Herring, dressed as Flora.
This one.
Right.
Okay.
Now I'll tell you why he's dressed as Flora in a moment. And he's posed with his lover and mother. Now, John is, unfortunately, he's deceased now, but at the time he had AIDS. And I wanted to make, I've known him for years at the time, and I wanted to make a very, very formal, very beautiful classical portrait of this man and what he believed in, at least as far as what he believed in from my knowing him. And he was, before he had to retire because of his illness, a florist. And I chose Flora by Rembrandt because Flora is the goddess of flowers and also prostitution. And he, being this kind of outrageous gay man, he loved that idea. And we talked about it first, because I always collaborate with the people, the subjects I use for my work.
And where do you find the subjects most of the time?
I find the people I photograph sometimes in my travels, sometimes people write me directly. Most often, though, in California, I had 2 people who scout for me.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, and we still haven't told our viewers what you're looking for. You look for dwarfs, or you look for, are these just things that are in your mind and you happen to find people from everyday life situations, or do they have to be, I hate to say, deformed in some way, or have gone through a tragedy before you're interested in them?
Okay. In my kind of repertoire, visual work, even in the show at Fay Klein right now that's opening tonight, sure, there'll be evidences of, again, unusual people, physically unusual people, but they're not deformed.
Physically, that's why I didn't want to use the word, because I think that's wrong to say that. It is wrong. Tell me it's wrong.
It is, because I celebrate their differences, we'll say. I celebrate the fact that they're beautiful in a different kind of aesthetic. It's if most people on Earth, say, aren't that way, then we're establishing a norm. And the difference is that kind of, you know, what is that, don't bother me with this. And people are basically live in denial, but except the people that have this reality don't live in that denial, they live in their reality. And I think that eventually, in a kind of the best hierarchical sense of knowing and loving, that slowly, terribly slowly, we're getting to the point of seeing that difference is good if it's a very positive and loving type of difference.
It sounds all very normal, the way you explain things, but people look at your work as being very exploitive. Do your subjects feel like they've been exploited by you in any way?
Oh, yeah. I work with people in a kind of collaboration. I choose them And they have been, most often when I deal with people who are, say, have worked in sideshows and circuses, and they have been exploited all their life. My job, if I see them and I decide, because I have to make that decision, first and finally, to make a photograph of them, in some way, some metaphoric way, that I have to convince them to be photographed, and I am not going to exploit them. I'm going to present them in a way that's very, very beautiful, in a way they've never been photographed or pictured or visualized that way before.
That's what I would say then. That's the way you set up the situation. Doing a photograph for you then is a long process. It's almost like writing a script, getting to know the people, deciding what suits them before you actually even take the photograph or think of the photograph.
I believe it's every photograph I make is an opportunity that I feel is a form of given or grace. Because I think that a person who is totally truthful in their seeking their higher self, their spiritual growth, is basically going to find themselves in situations, being connected with different people, different places. In my case, the opportunity to make photographs of very unusual and very wonderful people. That the opportunity is to share a small moment in time of a person's life. And as I mentioned, to basically make an image that is somehow about them as person, but basically about them as personae. I don't make portraits of people because I don't really believe in a thing like portrait.
That's what I had asked David Fay at the Fay Klein Gallery, because Randy Klein, his partner, and David had a dinner for you one night. Before I went, will Joel do a portrait? And he went, no, I don't think so. You can ask him, but I mean, and you're saying that right now. The other photograph that you brought is something of a new departure where you're not actually working with, well, you don't always work with live people either, but you're working with bones, I guess. Tell us about that a little bit.
Nothing I do is a departure per se, given the kind of arena of my interest. And I always deal with the human form. And of course, the understructuring or our armature per se is what I'm dealing with. And I did this photograph called Cupid and Centaur in the Museum of Love. Last year, 1992, in Marseille, I was an artist in residence in Marseille. And I created a few images, 3 that are in the current show. And what happened is that I found myself, again, finding myself, given grace from above, divine vehicle, in a very, very muddied divine way, we'll say, towards making a very, very powerful image. And I didn't know why I was in this Museum of Natural History in Marseille, and I kept talking to the curator, and he kept saying, come upstairs, you have to come upstairs. I said, no, I'll go upstairs. And we went up to this attic, and there was mountains of bones, and then a very old 18th, 19th century skeletons and historical artifacts. And I did have this idea. I always want to travel with a book of ideas and concepts. And I had in mind always to do this kind of horse or centaur and combination of something or other. Until I see it, I don't know. But I did see a human skeleton that was very good and very powerful. Then I saw this ostrich. And luckily, the bones were the same color. So I was onto something. But I needed the vehicle that meant to be love, of course, Cupid, the son of Venus, the goddess of love. And after 4 days then of working, getting permission to work with these bones, and working with a Frenchman named Christian, and we basically, with this string I got from Turkey, a strong carpet, black string, we actually tied these things and from the bones and tied them onto the rafters of this very high ceiling. And I created this photograph after 4 days of sweltering in this top of this roof of this building. And it was a very, very remarkable thing. For me, it was remarkable because I wanted to make an image about what a real museum should be about. Not a scientific museum, but a kind of a metaphorical museum of purpose and destiny.
And while we're talking about museums, I know you have a retrospective coming up in 1995 at...
January 1995 at the Guggenheim Museum, Uptown.
Uptown, and congratulations to Joel, and thank you very much for being with us. We'll call you now Uptown Joel Witkin.
Uptown girl I've always wanted to be.
Don't go away, we'll be right back. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and we're back with Ellen Tauscher, the founder of ChildCare Registry. Ellen began her career in investment banking and brokerage work on Wall Street. Ellen, how did you get from Wall Street to childcare?
Well, I think I did it the easy way. I had a baby.
That sounds like childcare.
That's the real easy thing. I'm a late mother. I was married in 1989, and we started to have a family. And when she was born in 1991, she was extremely premature. She was 12 weeks premature. And since we lived in California, my family's on the East Coast, I started looking about to find someone that could help me with her after she came home from the hospital. And as I interviewed placement agencies and started interviewing child care providers, I found myself in a position where I never felt as if I had enough information about the person.
So you
kept
having people over, and
Yeah.
you weren't satisfied with what you were getting?
Well, I found two things. First of all, I found out that I didn't have good information about the people I was interviewing, and I also bothered me that when I was interviewing some very good people, some very quality people who had great resumes and good interest in child care, and who I felt that would be appropriate to work for me. But I still didn't feel as if they had a service that provided them with the best kind of background check for themselves, so that they could go out to the people that they wanted to have hire them and put their best foot forward.
So your baby brought about your business.
Yes, literally.
That sounds very good.
Well, you know, I was used to, as an adult, to buying a VCR and looking at Consumer Reports or reading car magazines to find a car, and you know, we're very much of an information age type of people. And when I went to look for a child care provider, I felt as if I didn't have an information solution that worked for me. And then talking to friends of mine that were later parents, and now that I'm in this business, talking to parents across the country, we find that parents are desperately looking for comprehensive, reliable, easily accessible, and inexpensive information about child care providers. So we formed this company to do that.
Well, what is the company? Tell us what the company does.
Well, we have a very sophisticated computer network. We do background verifications nationwide on child care providers.
What's it called first?
It's called the ChildCare Registry.
Registry. So can you just look it up in your
Yeah, we're based in Danville.
information?
Yeah, we're based in Danville, California, and you could call the 800 information and get our 800 number. But essentially what we do is child care providers all over the country retain us to verify their backgrounds.
Oh, is it basically a verification
Yes.
business? Oh, I see.
Yes.
And what do you look for in a person?
Well, what we've decided is that the parents really want as much information as they could get, and they want it in a comprehensive form that gives them some history. So we went absolutely to the wall and get the most information we can. So we have developed a seamless 7-year background check that is done by our investigating team all over the country, and we literally check and verify the person's identity, which is their name, their address, their phone number, their date of birth, and their social security number. And then we go one step further, and we get their driver's license, and we also get all of their job and educational background information for that period of time. And then we also do a criminal and civil check in all the jurisdictions they live during that period of time.
Well, how many people would need to use a service like this? I mean, there's a lot of working parents now,
Yes.
two parent family workers, or even single family workers.
Yeah, they're called DWINKs, double income with children, with kids.
But also people with single incomes.
Oh,
would they
absolutely.
be able to afford doing something like this, or do they need it?
Well, we believe every parent needs it. We think that parents, we know that when we talk to parents across the country, they tell us that to have a comprehensive system that provides them with reliable data that they can access very quickly, that's inexpensive. It costs $100 to get into our system. You can pay by check or credit card. The dossiers are no more than 60 days old, so you get very timely information. This is what a dossier looks like. It's literally a 4-page document that not only provides the person with a ton of information, but it also says, it asks them some significant questions that a parent can use this as a interviewing tool. But beyond the fact that, you know, we know that it's inexpensive and comprehensive, we've got
What is like the first question?
Well,
on
the
there?
first question on it is, have you ever been dropped, suspended, or expelled from a university or college? Have you ever been convicted or found liable for fraud, deceit, misrepresentation, forgery, assault, battery, rape, sexual molestation, child neglect, child abuse, in any civil, criminal, administrative, or other proceeding?
But we're back to the same problem. If someone's going to lie to you in a
Well, the truth is,
interview, then they're going to lie on this paper.
but what we do is verify the information. If they lie to us, we'll know it. We literally go to every jurisdiction where they've lived, and we hand check both the civil and criminal county court situation to find the information.
What about matching up people? Like a family will call you and say, this is what I want. Can you find me someone that will fit into my family?
We are not in the placement business. We are in the background verification business.
Oh, it's no placement at all.
No placement at all. We believe that placement has obviously a very serious need. There are less child care providers right now than people that want them. 50% of all people in child care leave every year. There's a significant seller's market in the sense that child care providers move around a lot. People are leaving the business. So the security that parents feel about who this person is really has to be demonstrated in the kind of background they get on them.
Well, so if you don't match people, do you hear the horror stories that
Yes.
are...
Yes.
You hear? What kind of horror stories are there?
Well, there's the story of the family that's been on TV, the family outside of Boston. The mom and dad both work for a computer company. They had premature triplets. Part of the mom's maternity leave was eaten up by the fact the kids were in the hospital for a part of that time. She got a reference from her insurance company, believe it or not, to go to an agency nearby. She interviewed what they perceived and what they presented to her to be the most qualified candidate. Interpersonally, she and the husband got along with her just great. They found her to be somebody that fit into the family situation very well. No background check was ever provided, although there were allusions by the nanny agency that they had done one. It turns out that sometime subsequent to the mom going back to work, in the mail they received a bank statement with the mom's name but the nanny's address on it, and they kind of blew it off as some kind of miscommunication from the bank. And sometime later the mom's radar must have started going off because she came home unannounced in the middle of the morning to find her 3-month-old triplets alone and screaming in the house.
Oh, no.
The nanny had, she called the police thinking the nanny maybe was kidnapped or something bad happened to her, and the police found her at the mall where she was posing as the mom with a checkbook with the mom's ID. She'd bought a car with the mom's identification, and the truth of the matter is she'd never been checked out by the nanny agency, and she was a convicted felon in Rhode Island.
So this is
Right.
what you
We would have found it out
You would
in
have
4
found
days.
it out. Give me a quick happy ending to one of these things instead
Well,
of something so desperate.
The truth of the matter is the happy endings are that parents want reliable information. They want to hire someone. They want to feel comfortable about them. Most child care providers are good people. They are people that are very sincere about making themselves good child care providers and people that families can trust. Those are the people that we think we're serving very well. We give child care providers the best foot forward by presenting them in a very professional way with the dossier, and we give parents the information they need to feel comfortable. I know that when I see information about child care providers that I'm looking at myself to hire, I feel just a little bit more at ease. And it's that we're not a prescription for safety in child care. Parents have significant responsibilities about making sure that they check references and they go through a very sophisticated interview process of their own.
There's so many problems nowadays, and we have to really be aware of all those things. I think what you're talking about, just in checking that kind of background, can apply everywhere,
Yes.
across the board.
Absolutely. People need more information. They make better decisions as consumers with more information.
One of the things I was talking to you about before when I was asking about matching up, I know that since the economy is so bad, are there ways to find people who could trade services? Could you trade a nanny service for something else? Have you been aware of any of those type of situations?
Well, we do hear of things like that. The truth of the matter is that we're not interested in making child care more expensive. We think our $100 cost is something that is affordable for most people. It's certainly, we've done a lot to keep the technology in our company very, very sophisticated and state-of-the-art, so we can keep our prices very low.
That's low, but what about somebody else? Like if I need somebody and I can't can I trade a room and board, or can I do something like that?
Many child care providers in the live-in situation do get less salary in exchange for things that are tangible, like room and board, use of a car, a vacation once a year. There are lots of situations that we know of where child care providers really aren't even looking for necessarily monetary gain. Of course, that's important,
Right.
but they're looking to be part of a family that's happy.
I think that's really the exciting part of it, and I think talking to you and learning that someone's out there nationally checking on people who can really be an asset to your family and
Absolutely.
to help you in your family. And we thank you for starting this business.
Thank you, Joan.
And thanks for being with us, Ellen.
It's fun.
And all of you, check up on everything. And thanks for watching us today. See you next time.